Welcome to Tools and Rules for Living a Discerning Life. Okay, we're up to Rule 9. So again, St. Ignatius's observations of true things about the spiritual life. And in Rule 9, he answers the question, why do we experience spiritual desolation? Why does God allow us to have this? And that's a very good question. It's first of all very important to know that God doesn't send spiritual desolation, but he does allow it. And there are three reasons why a person can find themselves in spiritual desolation, or three ways you could understand it. So remember, we want to be aware of it, but then to understand it. One reason why a person can experience spiritual desolation is because of spiritual sloth. You know, instead of taking your prayer time, you get lazy and you sleep in and you hit the snooze and you whittle away at your prayer time. The result of that will be a feeling of maybe emptiness, and other spiritual desolation will come, lessened faith, lessened hope for the future. And it's a result of cutting corners. So sometimes it's a result of our own sloth, our own laziness in the spiritual life. And then what's needed is kind of a moment of renewal, to pray for the grace to kind of get back on the horse and take the spiritual life seriously. Another reason why spiritual desolation comes, maybe you're really being very disciplined and you're maintaining your spiritual life, and yet you find yourself experiencing the heaviness of spiritual desolation. Well, some things can only be taught through this type of trial. And God, our loving Father, wants his children to grow up to be strong spiritual adults, in a sense. And so certain lessons can only be learned by flexing your spiritual muscles and resisting spiritual desolation. And that strength is only going to come by that type of exercise, spiritual exercise, of resisting the lie of spiritual desolation. So that type of growth can only happen in that type of darkness. So what we can learn from it is the second reason. And the third reason, or way we can understand the spiritual desolation that we sometimes go through, is that ultimately it makes us more grateful and more humble before spiritual consolation. We begin to realize, I should not take those consoling moments for granted. Every moment of consolation, every uplift of heart, every drop of faith, hope, and love are a gift from God. And these should humble me. And so these gifts of consolation should bring about a humility and a gratitude in me. So spiritual desolation is only and always ever a lie. The things you hear in spiritual desolation are not true, that you can't pray, that you're no good, that you have no faith, and you have to resist them. And in resisting them, you realize that you grow in ways that maybe you couldn't grow if you were not experiencing that spiritual desolation.